Three, two, one. Mr. Chad Crawford, how are you, sir?
I'm good. It's feels good down here in Florida. It's a little hot, but it's good. Life's good down here.
Yeah, I can't imagine it's never not nice in Florida. I
Well, there's a reason people migrate down here during the winter and they go back home during the summer. It gets hot down here, starting, around, June and obviously even through September is a little warm, but, not too bad.
I will gladly trade that in for the polar vortex that we had this last winter.
Yeah.
I think it got to negative 43 degrees outside
Yeah. I was
for
watching
about
you guys on the news.
laughing.
Yeah, something like that.
Who I have with me, folks, on the podcast is Chad Crawford. He is the creator and host of the Emmy award-winning show How to Do Florida, amongst a couple of other things that we'll touch on later. Chad, it's been going on for about 10 seasons now, right?
Yeah, man. I had different hair. I was a very different man when I started this journey.
I,
But it's been a good one.
I like the look, actually. I like it. Actually, I hope my hair gets that way. That's a good look. I like that. Uh, how did it your seasons, are they like per year, like one a year? Or is it like two a year, or how does that work?
We typically film 13 shows, 13 half-hour shows per season. Our season starts around February and runs till about April, May. And then the shows launch during the summer.
Okay.
So, the best time to be in Florida, for my opinion, is that February through May is that sweet spot. It's cool, it's crisp, there's no humidity in the air, everything is green, there's fish biting. To me, that is prime time. And that's when we film. And then we go sit in dark rooms during the summer when it's hot and we put all the shows together. And that's kind of our process.
Okay. So you've been doing this for about 10 years then.
10
10th
years.
season, 10 years. Wow. So a whole decade, Chad. That's incredible.
I know.
Yeah. It's a great show. I've turned into a huge fan. I was turned on to it by my dad's wife, Kay.
Yeah.
She met with you about, I would say, about 4 or 5 years ago. Maybe they came down to hang out, and she told me about you, and I looked you up, and I think the first episode I ever saw was when you went, I think it's called surf casting,
Yeah. Yeah.
where
Yeah.
you got bit by a crab.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
it,
Yeah.
it yeah,
Well, it's called surf fishing.
surf
Part of that
fishing.
is casting the rod. But yeah, surf fishing. Yeah.
Yeah, and I thought, wow, this is kind of cool, and I kept rechecking in, and again I would see new things that you were up to, and I'm telling you, Chad, because of your show, I don't think I've ever really done Florida because I've always either gone to Walt Disney or Orlando theme parks or what
Yeah.
have you. And there's so much out there, Chad. You've done a great job showing everybody what that's like. How did that come across? Like, how did this bloom? How did this become a show?
Well, about 10 years ago, I was coming home. I owned my own company. So I would come in Monday morning and I would tell all my employees what I did during the weekend. You kind of have that weekend. What'd you do? Anything exciting? Yada, yada, yada. Let's get down to business.
Right.
Well, I would tell people what I was doing: scuba diving, surfing, fishing, shrimping, camping. And they're like, where are these places? And I was like, what are you talking about? This is all around us. And they're like, well, I'm not from Florida. I'm from Ohio. This guy's from, Kansas. And I'm like, goodness gracious, you guys don't know what you don't know. I started doing some research and I realized that 70% of people who live in this state aren't from this state. So that's a big swath of people who
Yeah.
didn't grow up in an area. And when you grow up in an area, it's part of your culture. You have the culture of, my parents did this, so this is what we do, and you learn along the way. And we had a lot of people here who just didn't know what they didn't know. And the show is really about creating advocates for our state, because I realized we had a lot of people who were here, but they weren't really here. And what I mean by that, John, is that their head was here, but their heart wasn't here. They had left their heart someplace else where they came from. They didn't really care about Florida. They came down here because of a job or the weather, and they were just kind of here. I wanted to turn those people into real advocates for our state connect them to the environment, and get them to love it. And we've done that, and we have a huge fan base of people who have done what what we do in the show, and now they have family traditions of outdoor activities, and it's really transformed their family culture living here in this state.
Yeah, that's great. So take me back to that moment where you said you owned a company. What were you doing? Like, was it the same company you own now, or did was it like what was the company?
It was a video production company. So I went
Okay.
to school for video production. I went to school here locally, a school called Full Sail, to learn video and film. And
Okay.
the quick backstory with that is that, when I was in high school, I had a video productions teacher who was a dear friend of mine. He wasn't at the time. I was goofing off. I was a senior. This was the first year that class had been instituted in our school. He was new to the program, really didn't know what he was doing, trying to figure it out. We were a bunch of seniors coasting through, just goofing off. At the very last day of school, he pulled me aside and said, "Look," he's like, "you wasted a lot of time in my class." But he said, "If you weren't such a goofball, you would be good at this. You really have talent in this field." And I was like, "Whatever, man, I'm out of here." Well, from there, I went to the Navy for 2 years on a program where you do 2 years in the service and you come out and get it $20,000 for college. Well, I was sitting there thinking, what am I going to do? And I remembered that one teacher who told me I'd be good at something. No teacher had told me I'd be good at anything. And I said, okay, well, let's give this a try. And so I enrolled in Full Sail, and that started my career. Graduated in 95. So ever since 95, I've been in some kind of production.
Okay.
And I had a very successful video production company doing corporate video. We did stuff for Reebok and a lot of, Florida Hospital, a lot of big brands around the country. And I just got sick of that. I wanted to do something that I owned, and I always wanted to do a television show. I wanted that challenge. And, someone very smart told me one time, is like, if you're going to do something like this, make sure it's something you are so passionate about. And that's the only way it'll be successful.
Oh, those are good words.
Yeah, so I knew I was passionate about film. I knew I was passionate about Florida. So I kind of put those two together, and that's and then on top of that kind of realization of having those conversations with my employees and doing a little research, I realized, like, this needs to be a show.
Yeah, that's incredible. I think you definitely found your niche, and it definitely comes out in your show how much you love Florida. In fact, I know they're out there, but I have not met anybody that loves their state as much as you love your state, sir. Um, but there is I had no idea there were thousands of places out there in Florida that you could do. So how long does it take to? I mean, I'm from start to finish. How long does it take to film a show? Like to create a show, to create one episode?
We typically film, there's quite a bit of pre-production that goes into it. We typically film for anywhere from a day and a half to 2 days to make 1 half-hour show. In the midst of that, we'll film about 8 hours of footage, and we'll cut it down to about 21 minutes. So that's the ratio of what we film versus what gets cut down and actually makes it to air. So that's kind of the process. I have two other shows. I have a kids show, The Outsiders Club, which I'm really proud of. And then I have a yard show that really teaches Floridians how to use less water, less chemicals on their yard. We kind of have a water crisis going on down here with really too much development really close to sensitive estuaries and waterways. We in Florida are in love with our St. Augustine lawns. And to have all that requires a lot of chemicals, a lot of fertilizer. All that stuff gets flushed down into the street, down into the culverts, to a creek, into a river, and eventually makes its way down to Lake Okeechobee and the Everglades.
Gosh, we know how to really mess stuff up, don't we?
Well, we've taken some really good steps over here in the last year or two to reverse a lot of what's been done, but we've got a long way to go. And Florida has some hard lessons in front of it that it needs to learn, especially around the environment.
Yeah, that's it's interesting. You it I'm really impressed by how you haven't just you've taken a show and you've made it kind of like a passion project, and it's branched out into the Outsiders Club. That's with a bunch of children that basically it's taking kids out of the house and playing video games and on their phones and putting them out into the world and really deep diving in. Where did that come from? Where did that inspiration come from?
Having kids,
Yeah.
realizing like, holy shit, like if I'm the host of How to Do Florida, my kids should be eating bark and running around the woods, right?
Yeah, that's
And
a good
that was
point.
not the case. I realized if I'm struggling with this, I can imagine a single mom who's, struggling to make ends meet, who's trying to raise a couple boys or whoever.
Yeah.
Um, all this technology has come upon us, especially as parents, so fast with no real rules or handbook. So everybody's really trying to kind of figure it out. What is that balance? And there's so many studies that are coming out about the effects of really kind of this sedentary lifestyle that these
Yeah, definitely.
devices, create for our children. So we're just in the midst of learning, these effects. And my prediction is in the next 5-10 years, you're going to have a warning sign on the back of your phone, just like you do on a pack of cigarettes, that says warning, Surgeon General, too much time on this or too much exposure to this could create diabetes. You list off some diseases, just because I think that's where it's headed. And I think we're probably 5-10 years away from seeing something like that.
Yeah, you know what? You make a actually a very good scary point. It is dangerous. I find myself I think it was a couple of days ago, my wife and I, Ursula, were sitting in our bed getting ready for bedtime and we're looking at our phones. We were looking at our phones, Chad, and I was like, "What are we doing? What are we doing? Let's put the phones down and talk to each other. What are we doing
Yeah,
here?"
yeah.
Yeah, it is a
It,
scary thing.
it's a shocking visual too. You when you
Yeah.
look up and see that, there's something about it just doesn't look right. I don't care what
Yeah.
you're reading. I don't care how smart it is. It just doesn't look right.
Yeah, you're right. I think we're going farther and farther away from what we were meant to be,
Yeah,
you
amen.
know, and we're evolving in a pretty ugly way from it, with how kids just react to, or how even adults are reacting to a like on Facebook or a like on Instagram or anything like that. So I think what you're doing with your show is really encouraging. It gets you wanting to go out and be part of the world that you live in and not just looking at it through a little, through a screen.
Yeah,
So I think that's really powerful. I think that's
yeah,
cool.
yeah.
Going back to your show, what has there ever been like a favorite moment or a segment of yours?
Mm. Well, one that stands out is season one. Um, this was a real kind of a beg, borrow, and steal effort to start up. Me and my wife borrowed significant amount of money to start this up, with really not knowing what was going to happen. Because I knew I needed to have the conversation I need to have with sponsors was that we're doing this, with or without you, we're doing this. I couldn't go into a sponsor and say, hey, if you give me all this money, we'll make this amazing show.
Right.
Well, sponsors don't want to hear that. They want to know that this is happening and this is funded. This is going to go. And then if they want to be a part of it, great. If not, oh well, it's still going to happen. So I had to take some financial risk up front to make that happen. So that whole first season, I carried all that weight of that financial burden throughout everything. And I remember just sitting in my hotel, just kind of freaking out, like, what the hell am I doing? Like, oh my gosh, like I can't afford these guys in this hotel. Like, I can't afford this crew. Like, this is all borrowed money. I don't know if this is going to work,
Yeah.
just feeling the weight of that. And we were in the Florida Keys and we were going to shoot a segment on how to do a charter boat. The Florida Keys is full of charter boats. Anyone who doesn't know what a charter boat is, it's, you show up, you rent a boat, you get on the boat with a captain. The captain takes you out and you go fishing. And that can be
Mm-hmm.
backcountry, it can be offshore, it can be a variety of different fishing scenarios. So we're going to do a short little segment on that. And we were supposed to go out to a small reef and film. We're going to be in and out in 4 hours. Well, once we got to the reef, we caught a few fish. I was like, I kind of got my segment here. And the captain said, hey, man, I think this is a great opportunity for us to go 35 miles out and fish on the continental shelf and try to catch a swordfish.
Oh, is this the Captain Stanzik?
Yes.
Oh, I loved this episode. This was one of my main questions to talk to you about. Set the stage, my man. Set the stage. I'm all yours.
Well, and I was like, there's no way. I've got other stuff I've got to film. I was like, I can't waste my whole day. You understand when you're trying to, when you're paying for a crew, the object for that day is to film as much as you can in one day. One day.
Okay.
Film crew works on a 10-hour day. And so as a producer and as somebody who is paying for that, your goal is to cram that day with as much production. Because all that production is value for me. It's property. That's what I own. It's what I walk away with.
Okay.
So my goal is to film as many segments as much as I can in that one day. I don't have time to do this. So he's very convincing. He was very convincing. And, finally I agreed to do it, but I was not happy that we were, and for the next 2 hours, we sat in a chair as we took off 35 miles off into the Atlantic, to fish in 2,000 feet of water on the continental shelf. I'm just like, I don't know what the heck we're doing. Like, this is not the segment I need to film. Like, I don't know what this is. But I knew that these guys were onto something big because they had pioneered this daytime sword fishing. Anybody who knows anything about swordfish, they're traditionally caught at night. At night, the swordfish move up into the water column to feed on squid. Makes it easier for them to get to. But during the day, they're in 1,500 feet of water, which is very difficult to fish in that deep of water.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we get out there, and literally they would use a cinder block as a weight to get, well, not a cinder block. It was like a lead, a concrete bucket type thing. It was like a breakaway weight. It was just to get the weight to the lures to the bottom.
No kidding.
I mean, so just the apparatus that you're filming with is ridiculous. It's all these glow in the dark squids. It's very expensive gear. I mean, it looks like nothing I've ever seen. It looks like we're fishing for aliens. I mean, it's really kind of bizarre.
Okay.
So I'm just kind of like, I don't know what the hell's going on. Just guys, let's shoot all this. I don't know what we're doing here. So we lost 4 fish, and everybody on that boat was screaming at each other. The captain, Richard Stanzik, who was my expert, they're yelling at each other. They're brothers, so there's just a lot of tension there. And everybody in the Keys is just very salty, especially when it comes to a captain. And they will fire off. They don't care. They're an equal opportunity offender, and it's just very tense on the boat.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
And so the captain says, "We're going to do one last drop," and we do one last drop, and it's like, it's 5 o'clock, and we're 3 hours from shore. The sun's starting to go down, and we finally hook a fish, and so we start reeling it in. An hour later, we get the fish to the surface where they can see it. And the whole time the mood on the boat is not, it's just like, okay, we got a fish, reel it in. There's not real excited. It's just kind of like, whoo, we got one. Let's get it in the boat so we can get the hell out of here.
Yeah.
But when that fish first comes up and the crew sees how big the fish is, they just go ballistic. They go crazy. And I'm just like, what's going on? Like, I'm like, this is good. I guess this is good. Like, what are we doing? They're ripping up the bench seats, pulling out gaffs they hardly ever use.
What's a gaff? What's a gaff?
It's like they're using a flying gaff, which is it's designed to be kind of a breakaway gaff. They use it just on really big fish. So
to help wheel it in?
No, it's like a giant pole that has a gaff at the end, but it's designed to break away, so that when it hooks into the fish, it breaks away. So now you have the fish on a rope and not a stick.
Oh, okay. Okay. All right. I got you.
So with smaller fish, you can just gaff them. The gaff is connected to the pole, but this is called a flying gaff. Okay. They rarely use it, is my point. It's tucked away underneath the seat somewhere. So I ended up fighting this fish for almost 2.5 hours. I was absolutely wiped out. And they bring this fish in. It was the biggest fish that had ever been captured, a daytime swordfish like that by high definition film crew. And so we get in the boat, and I'll never forget it because the whole time, like, I don't understand. I mean, I'm excited we caught a fish, but I don't quite get it. And on the way in, there's a guy standing in the threshold. I'm crashed out on the couch. He's looking at that swordfish laying on the deck. And this man, he's caught more swordfish than anybody in the world. He keeps staring at this fish. And I walk out and I'm like, pretty good day, right? Pretty good fish. And he looks at me. He's real intense. He's like, you have no clue. I was like, I don't know. It's a good fish. He goes, I would gouge a man's eye out to catch a fish like that. He's like, I was like, whew. He goes, I've caught over 300 swordfish. My biggest one was 280. And he's like, I think this fish, it's time we didn't know how much it weighed.
Right.
But he was just in awe and, quite honestly, I think a little mad and angry that I had caught this fish and he didn't.
This film guy that doesn't know anything.
Exactly. I'm out here to catch some barracudas and some tuna, bonita. We get back to the dock, and like what I feel like is the entire Isla Morada is there waiting on us. The press and all, there's a big crowd gathered around, and it was just an incredible experience. And that show gave me an incredible amount of confidence. It gave us an incredible amount of credibility within the fishing community in Florida, and really just slingshotted what we were doing into the next stratosphere. So that was kind of a real pivotal moment for us as a film crew, me as a producer. And it was one of those moments I look back on. I'm getting goosebumps right now thinking about it. It was one of those moments that I'll never forget. And it was a real turning point for me in the show.
Wow, Chad, that is the episode after I watched that. Because I said I checked on you every now and then. That's the episode I caught, and I said, "Oh, I gotta talk to this guy." Chad, you're kind of being all a little bit coy about it. It was 440 pounds of raw fish. I don't think anybody I know. I think for the most part, I grew up in Wisconsin, Lake Geneva. So for the most part, we had maybe if we were lucky, we had a 60-second fight with maybe a largemouth bass.
Yeah.
Okay, so take me a little bit back in. So you're sitting in a seat, all right? You're locked in. You're buckled into this seat.
Yeah.
They got the rod buckled in as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
You said in the show you almost threw up twice.
Yeah.
Fighting this fish for 2 hours. I want everybody to understand what I'm saying here. 2 hours.
Yeah.
This guy fought a 440-pound fish. And what gave me goosebumps, Chad, what gave me goosebumps is when Captain Stanzik said to you, okay, this thing just came out of the depth and it's sitting and it sees us and it knows we're here now and it's just sitting in this warm water and it's getting its blood ready. Like it's ready to fight you. Like it's ready to go, okay, I'm just going to buy my time here and I'm going to fight you. I'm going to take you down.
You take it back, man. Wow. Yeah.
That is awesome. How many nobody I mean obviously he was even saying like nobody goes through this and you went through that. That's awesome. If that is not a sign that you're on the right track to doing something, then I don't know what was. That was super cool. But I have to also talk to you about one of the other fish that you caught, and I could tell the little kid in you came out. And I think you'll know because I've been dying to say this to you, and I didn't know the right time. But pig snook. I love that episode because you were so happy. You were such a little kid. Isn't that the one where the stingray jumped into the boat?
That was crazy too. That was our first season. So I had the stingray jump in the boat, and understand 2 months before that, someone was killed in Key West by an eagle ray jumping over the bow. The boat was on step. It was on plane. The stingray jumped over the bow and hit a woman right in the chest and killed her flat.
No way.
So this had already kind of been out there. It was in the news. There was another incident where a stingray jumped in a boat, hurt somebody, but didn't kill him. So when that stingray came over the bow, and it was a situation where normally my camera guy was always up front. We were in a no wake zone. We were going kind of slow.
Yeah.
But for some reason, he got on the camera boat, which was very rare. He's normally always with me.
Yeah.
And he got on the camera boat. So it was just me and the captain in the boat. We were behind the center console. And I look down at the water and I look back up at the bow, and I think I'm like in a dream. Here it is, this 70-pound eagle ray has jumped over the bow, lands in the front of the boat, and proceeds to beat the captain's boat to hell. I mean, just boom, boom, boom. And I'm working towards the back of the boat thinking we're trying to get my mic off because I'm like, I'm going to jump in the water because this thing is kind of working its way back towards us. Very scary situation. Obviously, you've seen the show, so we kind of eventually got it out of the boat and it swam off and it was okay. But it's just one of those things in Florida. Like, it's one of those bizarre experiences that makes it on the news, and people from out of state are like, "What? Like that happens?" Well, yeah, it
Yeah,
happens in Florida.
I was shocked. They do that a lot? They just jump into a boat? Like
They
how
they free jump a lot, and they don't fully know why they do that. They think the vibration from the motor scares them. But these animals free jump on their own. They don't know if it's to avoid predators, to get, like, during birth, mothers will free jump to try to get the baby out of its, to birth the baby.
Wow.
There's a lot of speculation as to why they do that, but they do it. And when you see it from a distance, it's magnificent.
I
When you
bet.
see it, when you see it 5 feet in front of you, not so magnificent. It's
I'm sure
scary as
it's
hell.
I'm sure it's terrifying. Because that was a big stingray that jumped in that boat.
And that's an eagle ray. That's the same ray that killed Steve Irwin.
I was going to say that. I was going to ask that.
Yeah.
Yeah. For those of you that are listening and are dying to look at these, I will put these in the link so you can see the 440-pound swordfish that he took on. Broadbilled, right? That's what it's
Yeah.
called? Yeah.
Swordbill. Yep.
And then he's fishing for snook, and that's the manta ray. So I'll put those links in at the bottom as you're watching this.
Yep.
Your love of fishing is obvious. In fact, I first thought, okay, this guy's just doing this show just so he can fish.
Don't tell anybody.
Where'd that love come from? I have a theory,
Yeah.
but I wanna know kind of. I think you love fishing as much as I love football,
There you go.
and
Yeah.
and I want to know kind of what does that mean to you on a personal level?
Well, my dad always took me fishing, from a very early age. That's just what we did. My dad fished, so I fished with him, and that was a very different time when, my dad that's all he wanted to do was fish. And I just happened to be in the boat, and I'd be back there and fishing. And, if I wanted to go home, it didn't matter. We're fishing, you better be quiet and fish or just, sit there. Um, and so I quickly learned to love it, and it was something me and my dad did, and it's a real bonding, time in my life. And I got to, my dad was a quiet man, but I learned what it was like to be a man by watching my dad, how he treated other anglers, how he treated the wildlife, his respect for people. And I saw other people respecting my dad. And obviously I wanted that when I grew up. So I learned a lot about just how to treat Florida, how to be a man by just being in the back of the boat, watching the man up front fish. And so, that coupled with, quite honestly, my grandfather, John Angel, he was this kind of superhero, bigger than life character for me as a kid. And I would sit at his feet and just listen to story after story. Just one of those master storytellers who could just give you those dramatic pauses and nobody would dare interrupt him, but just wait as he would go through those pauses to tell the rest of his story. The stories were a little embellished, but man, you didn't care. Like, you ate it up and it was just so good, so rich. And, I just fell in love with the outdoors. I absolutely loved it. I love the challenge of catching a fish. There's something about that for a fisherman knows that personal satisfaction of fooling a fish, fighting a fish, bringing that fish in and giving it respect, whether taking it home for a dinner or releasing it right there. There's something very spiritual about that for a fisherman that is addictive.
Yeah, that's I wish I felt that way about fishing. I'm trying to be more open-minded to it. I know because it sounds like something that my soul needs, but I'm
Uh,
not sure it's fishing. Or
yeah,
maybe, and I'm thinking maybe it's just because all that's around here. I live in Illinois, so all that's around here just seems to be bass.
yeah,
But I think if I were to, I don't know, go to the Keys, I've never wanted to go to the Keys more now than after watching your show.
yeah,
Um, it seems like there's everything to do down there, and I think if I were to go deep sea fishing or fish for snook or tarpon or anything like that, I think I would quickly change my mind.
yeah.
Um, have what was harder for you, the swordfish or a grouper?
Definitely the swordfish, just
Yeah.
because dealing
Okay.
with fish that's so deep, and fishing in that deep of water is just really hard. There's a reason not a lot of people do it. It's just very difficult. And fishing for grouper, you're fishing around structure, so you kind of know where they are. Swordfish is much more of a kind of a guessing game. Um, and but my favorite way to fish is just backcountry. Like I love snook is my favorite fish to catch.
You can tell.
There's nothing there's nothing meaner, nothing more sexy than a snook. The way they strike, the way they fight. I mean, you're just kind of in awe, And I've caught just pretty much every fish you can catch here in Florida. And to me, that one's my top two fish to catch are snook and a speckled perch. You
I've
guys,
never
you guys
speckled.
up north call them crappie or
Oh, okay, okay.
or white perch. We call them speckled perch down here. But those are my two favorite fish to catch. And snook are very big, speckled perch are very small, considered a panfish. But I love doing that because I fish with my kids with that, and there's nothing better eating than a good speckled perch. Good eating.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
I'll have to take your word for it. For
Yeah.
sure. The uh it was the grouper. Have you seen that YouTube video it's been trending for a while? They had these huge big muscle guys.
Yes.
You saw that with the
Yeah.
grouper,
That
right?
was my friend Josh Jorgensen, who I've had on the show. He has
Yes.
his Black Tip H is his channel, most watched fishing channel in the world.
Yeah, I
Uh,
got hooked on it, believe it or not. Yeah.
Incredible video,
Yeah.
incredible. Like I called him and said, like, dude, this is like, and he really followed that. He did a lot of stuff with Dude Perfect, which they do all these challenges.
Right.
And so he really kind of followed in some of that challenge stuff, and it's working out really well for him. His channel's blowing up.
Yeah, it's a fun watch. I'll also put that in the link for anybody that wants to see that. Um so two of my favorite episodes was of course the swordfish battle, and the other one was the gator hunt you guys did at night.
Yeah.
That's crazy, Chad. Like, um, I'll be honest, I would have been done when the swarm of mosquitoes came. That would have been it. I would have been out of there. I would have been like, no.
Half my crew was, believe me.
I bet. I bet. Was there some tension at the end there when you were biting down like it was almost you couldn't
Yeah.
go hunting anymore? It seemed like that I forgot the one guy. There were three guys in the boat. One
Yeah.
guy was like, "Get him, Chad, with that boomstick. Get him." And you're like, "Dude, I am trying here." How hard is it to hunt an alligator, man?
Well, this was my first time. So, and on the show, my character, well, my character is who I am, but you know, I always want people to not feel intimidated by me thinking I know everything. So my goal is for people to watch the show and say, "Hey, man, if this guy can do it, anybody can do it." Like I love fishing. I know how to fish, but I'm really there for the viewer. My show is not a fishing show. It's not a hunting show. It is a travel adventure show.
Right.
So my audience is very wide. It could be somebody like you who's just thinking about coming to Florida. It could be somebody who's just moved here. Um, so I always keep that in mind, not to drill down too much and get too technical on the show.
Right.
We're there to have fun. I'm there to encourage you to get off the couch and go do something is really my goal. Um, but that show was very difficult to film. There was a lot of tension on the boat. And it's just one of those things where, the guy told me, "Oh, we'll be in and out in 2 hours. I know right where the gators are. This should be no problem." But when a guy tells me that, I know now that that's not how it's going to go.
Right.
And it was
Yeah.
multiple days, multiple trips. But it made for one hell of a show. That's one thing I always realize in the moment when something feels very hard, it's going to be very good. And
Yeah.
that's something that is taking me a while to learn.
That's good life advice too.
Yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
um, I don't think anybody. I'm learning this myself. You don't improve without a challenge. Like,
Absolutely.
yeah. So, that's cool. I will also put that show in the link because that was a lot of fun watching that one. Um, what are your thoughts on overfishing, Chad?
Well, I think a lot of this idea around overfishing is a little bit of a myth just because I know that, from a perspective standpoint, like my dad, we go out fishing and he'll tell me there's more fish today than there was when he was fishing back in the 60s and 70s, fishing hard.
Really?
We have done, FWC has done an incredible job with, regulations that work, whether it's, taking, preventing taking of, spawning females at certain times of the year. They do that with snook. They do that with red snapper and a lot of different fish. Now, I think our conservation groups are just getting better at managing fish. One problem we're always going to have in Florida, as soon as we prevent something from being captured, well, it does what it does, and it
Yeah.
populates, and it we're having that problem with Goliath grouper now. Where it was a threatened species, it was prohibited from being taken, and now there's just they've reproduced at such a level that there's just too many of them. And so the dive boats want them there because they're good for business. Divers love seeing big giant fish on the reef.
Right.
Fishermen hate them because they're trying to catch an amberjack or a grouper, and when they lower their bait down on the reef, a Goliath grouper will wait for a black grouper or an amberjack to get on the hook, and then that Goliath grouper will come and eat the amberjack and everything right there.
Yeah, groupers are huge. Everybody that's listening that doesn't know what a grouper is, it is a humongous fish. It's like a big bowling, like not even a bowling ball. It's like a cannon down there.
Like a Volkswagen is. I mean, they're, and now you're talking about Goliath grouper. Now those are the big ones. That's what we're talking about here.
Yeah,
There's black grouper, red grouper. There's all different smaller types of grouper. They don't get that big. The Goliath grouper get to be the size of a Volkswagen. I think the world's record is like 900 pounds plus. So
wow.
these are giant fish who can eat just about anything it wants, and they do. So for fishermen, it's very frustrating. They can't fight the fish. It breaks all their tackle. The one I caught down in South Florida, when we opened up its mouth, it looked like a tackle shop in his mouth. There's so many hooks and sinkers and leader in his mouth because that's what they do. They're being conditioned to feed on bait being dropped down by fishermen, and that's
Man,
not good.
man. Yeah, no. Okay, so I'm glad you told me that because I guess maybe it's the media in terms of everybody's there's been this thing I've been hearing that overfishing is a huge issue and like in like 50 years we're not going to see a lot of fish anymore and if you're saying that that's not the case, I would take your word more than somebody I don't know.
Well, now when you're talking worldwide, I can't speak for, I know there's a lot of overfishing going on with China and Japan and out in our oceans, what the fish they're taking. I think that's another subject. But when you talk about the waters surrounding Florida, which is what I know,
Yeah.
our fisheries are very healthy. I think, recently we just had the bigger factor here is blue-green algae and the effect it's having on our estuary. That's really, much more of a threat to our fish population than overfishing, from my
how
opinion.
how so? What does it do?
Well, blue-green algae, there's a chemical reaction that creates the algae, and it robs the water of oxygen. And when you do that, it just has a significant effect on the fish population, ends up killing a lot of fish. So
Yeah.
this was, last year we had fish kills like we had never seen before. And not just your typical fish kills that kill catfish and kind of small bottom feeding fish, but this was major predators, snook, dolphin,
Oh man.
mammals, which this
Manatees.
manatees, exactly.
Ah,
So this was a significant fish kill that was national, that was on made national media news. So this is much more of a threat here in Florida to us than overfishing right now.
okay. I didn't know. I had no idea. Um, yeah, that sucks. You don't. It, you've done a really good job on your show, and believe me, folks, there's more to his show than just fishing. It's just the things that I've been wanting to talk to him about. So, and we'll get on to that. But the one question I wanted to add to you for the last fishing question, then we'll move on because again, folks, it's more than just fishing. Is there any type of fishing you haven't done that you want to do, like spear fishing or something
bow
of that nature? What's that?
bow fishing.
Bow fishing. Oh yeah, that would be fun.
Yeah,
Yeah, when you
I've had
were
several people ask me to do that, and I've just not had the chance to do it. But I don't know. That looks fun, primarily because you can target a lot of invasive species we have here in the state. One of them is a tilapia, which is not native to our waters, but they're big and they're really good eating, and they're kind of everywhere. So, and they're kind of an easy target. So I
Mhm.
think it would be fun to go out and bow fish for tilapia.
Wow. Speaking of invasive species, you guys got a python problem in the Everglades, don't you?
We do. Um, I think there's a lot of misinformation about how big the problem is, but it's definitely a problem.
Yeah, aren't they fighting like the alligators for king of the Everglades there? Like I've seen
Yeah.
videos where they're taking out alligators. It's
Yeah.
crazy.
Well, and they're killing a lot of the native species. So deer, raccoons, otter. These are species that really don't have a lot of predators. Maybe an alligator. Alligators are more eating turtles and gar. That's more of
Yeah.
their diet down there. But it's definitely have an effect on the small mammals, that live in the Everglades. It's just such a wild and vast area, John. I mean, the Everglades is so big, and it's so hard to it's so hard to manage such a big piece of land. I think they really don't know, and that's what's scaring the hell out of everybody is we don't know how many are there, what the real effects are that they're having. But this a lot of started when Hurricane Andrew. Hurricane Andrew came through South Florida, which is a vast majority of our exotic pet industry down there. Imagine just taking all those exotic pet stores and all those pets in people's homes and just spreading them out all over the Everglades. That's what happened.
Oh, is that what I thought it was like two or three guys that just got rid of their snake.
No,
Oh no.
obviously,
Wow.
obviously that's an issue, but where really gas got poured on it was during Hurricane Andrew, when all of those exotic pets got released. I mean, Hurricane Andrew just wiped home
Yeah, right.
their
Yeah.
population, so they're just gone. Um, and everybody had a python. I had a python as a kid. I had him in my aquarium sitting in my room. So you take that by a couple thousand down in the Everglades in South Florida, and they just got distributed all throughout the Everglades. So that really exacerbated the problem,
Yeah.
uh, way beyond just people releasing some pythons here and there.
Wow, I didn't know that. But okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh the what is one of the non-fishing adventures you've gone on that you enjoyed most on your show? I mean, you guys have gone camping. You guys have it seems like you're always cooking something up with Chef Justin. By
Yeah.
the way, how do I get onto that panel where I can sit behind and just cheer you guys on so I can eat something at the end of it? I'm not a foodie, but he can turn me into one for sure. For sure.
Yeah, I think an episode that stands out was me taking my son on a canoe camping trip down the Swanee River. Um, I had never been on the Swanee, and I was just blown away at how beautiful it was, first off. But then to do that with my son, he was 8 years old, and I think I gave him a knife on the episode.
I
Um,
remember that now. Yeah.
yeah, and it was just a beautiful episode. It was such a picturesque setting, and it really tapped into. It was the first time I had, not the first time, but the first time I had done a show with just one of my kids, and we got such a great response from that show. And I realized it really tapped into a lot of fathers who are looking to connect with their kids
Yeah.
and families just in general. And we got such a great response from that. And since then, I've done other shows like that. I just finished one with my daughter, who's 8 now, and I think it's one thing to say, go do this with your kid. It's another thing to just model that and people to see it, and for somebody to look at that and say, "Oh, I could do that. It doesn't look too hard." And that's the goal, is that I would do it, and then somebody would look at that and say, or their kid would say, "Hey, Dad, let's go do this."
Yeah.
Uh, those are some of the greatest moments I had with my father, was learning to do something the both of us didn't know how to do. Later after fishing, we both learned to duck hunt together, and we didn't know how to duck hunt, but we learned together, and we failed and we had successes together. And those are some of the greatest moments I have with my dad, is just us figuring out something together. And that's a lot of my fans, people who've never been camping, never been fishing, and they're learning it out, figuring it out as they go. And I love that dynamic.
Yeah, I think like I said, man, you do a great job of just showing people that, hey, you don't need to be Crocodile Dundee to go out and
Yeah.
enjoy a canoe trip. And I think when you include your family, it's really cool. I just remember the episode of you and your wife. You took her down. It was some sort of canoe where you kept connecting into lakes, and then you went antiquing, and I
Yeah.
forgot what the lakes are.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
she was catching more fish than you that day, I remember.
It's normally how it
um
goes.
and it was great. It was great seeing how you're pulling your family into it, and it just seems to me like you have such a great understanding of your audience and of your show, and so it really comes out. I just want to let you know that it comes out as you watch it. Like, this guy really loves Florida.
Well, Florida's a little quirky. Florida's a little goofy. Florida's a little,
No, you don't say.
yeah. I get that Florida has a weird and not such stellar reputation across. I've read enough history books. I know how most people feel about Florida. It's plastic. It's this. It's that. Um, and I get that. So I want the show to feel like that, a little campy, not taking itself too seriously,
Right.
a little off. That's not only partly who I am, but I think it's who Florida is. And so that's the feel and the flavor of the show. We don't take ourselves too seriously. You're going to see me fall. You're going to see me do something stupid, because I want you to kind of feel comfortable and relax and be drawn in and not feel intimidated.
Yeah, I just watched your blooper reel today. It was on Facebook. Yeah, so I just started watching that today. Um, yeah, I think you're right. I think a lot of people, when they think of Florida, they think of people that can't vote or can't understand the voting process.
The hanging Chad. Yeah, I
Yeah,
got a lot of grief from that.
and I think they also think Miami, and they think, they think of places like that. They don't think
Yeah.
of um all the great places that are around Florida. Speaking of great places, I get the feeling that the Keys are one of your favorite spots. Is there any other spots out there that not a lot of people know about that's just a great little spot to go check out?
Well, I think the Panhandle, Florida's Panhandle, is so unique. We
What
did
makes
a
it
show.
unique?
It just looks so much. It looks not like Florida. The sand dunes on that coast. Especially starting around Destin, wrapping all the way to Pensacola. There, the sand is so white. The water is so blue. And just the topography of that land. You have those rolling hills. You have things called dune lakes, where there's literally a lake right next to the ocean, because of high tide, has created all these indents, these areas where fresh water has gathered. So you have lakes right next to the ocean.
Oh, that's
Uh,
cool.
it's just a very unique place that does not look like Florida. And I love going up there just to remind me of how diverse Florida is. It's so long in the latitude that you have, it goes through four different temperate zones, or some subtropical, all the way up to, up in North Florida, where you have, you're up close to Georgia.
Really?
So you've got all these different zones that Florida has, with different plants and different trees and different, landscaping. So it's very diverse in that way. Um,
Yeah.
but I would say that area to me is really neat, just because it feels like old Florida. It's not as crowded. You get a little bit of a glimpse into Florida's past up there, I think.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So 10 years in, what is how to do Florida? What does the future hold, Chad?
Well, I guess probably around season 4 and 5, every time we'd finish a season, I'd be like, all right, we want to keep doing this. So what do you think? At this point, like, this is what I do.
Yeah.
There is no like, oh, well, maybe we'll do another season. Like, I don't know. This is what I'll do probably until, they tell me to stop doing it. Somebody does, or,
Good. That's what I wanted to hear. Good.
um, I mean, next season, like, there's some things in my top. I want to do some shark diving. That's gotten to be really big here in Florida.
Oh, there you go. Yes,
Yeah,
sir.
some shark diving. Um, there's a lot of still a lot of things on my bucket list of things I want to do in the state that I haven't had a chance to do. So there's still quite a bit out there.
How much of insurance is going to cover it, Chad?
That's a great question. The reason I didn't do it last season was because of insurance. My insurance company calls me every year before I start the show, and kind of forced me to give them a list of activities, and shark diving was on there, and they threatened to like drop me, so I had to take that one off. But so I'm gonna have to figure out a way around that.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to hit on that I thought that you did was a really cool episode was that you helped to create reefs. Am I right when I say it like that?
Yeah, the Coral Reef Foundation down in Key Largo.
Yeah, where
Yeah.
they're like there's this like Christmas tree of all these like little pipes underwater that are growing coral, and you
Yeah.
were plucking them and like gluing them down on the rock. Is that right? Like you were? Is that?
Yeah, so it's a elk coral, excuse me. They grow out in the ocean. It grows fairly rapidly, and by rapidly, like an inch a year. So once that coral reaches a certain stage, they can take it off those out of the nursery. And what they're doing, they're trying to replenish areas that have been affected by disease. There's a lot of things going on with Florida Keys reef system. They don't fully understand what's going on, but there's a lot of what they call bleaching, and basically the coral is dying. So they're trying to go back in there and replant coral in those sensitive areas. And it's really just an epoxy that you connect to the rock, and you put the staghorn on there, and it'll eventually fuse itself. It's almost like grafting an orange tree. A lot of people don't realize, orange trees are grafted. So it's typically some type of root. So it's a root from a lemon tree, which is a better root system. And then so they'll take a piece of orange and they'll graft it to that lemon root, and that will make an orange tree. So every
No
orange
kidding.
Yeah, so every orange tree we have in Florida is really a combination of several trees to get the perfect tree. So in
No way. I
similar,
didn't know that.
yeah, it's really fascinating what they do.
Yeah.
So they take the root system from sometimes it's from a lemon tree, but really any citrus tree that has a great root system, and they'll use that root system, root stock is what they call it, and they'll graft the orange part on top of it, which is the fruit part.
Hmm.
And then eventually, so if you go to a Home Depot and you find a citrus tree, look at the base of it, you'll see like a little hitch at the bottom where the tree makes a little jolt out.
Okay.
That's where it was grafted. So anyway, just a little bit of citrus.
No, that was awesome. Knowledge bomb by Chad, folks. Knowledge
Yeah.
bomb by Chad.
But back to the coral, it's a similar thing they do with the coral. They kind of graft it onto existing coral, and then it grows, and we'll start a new elk coral system right there.
Yeah, I think that's really cool. My wife and I haven't gone down to that part of Florida, but we went to the Great Barrier Reef in Australia,
Oh
and
wow.
that was really cool. And so it kind of brought me back when I watched that episode, and that's why I wanted to touch on that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, 10, like I said, 10 years in, how has this show, like, and you said it perfectly, this show has become, this is what you do. How is, how's the Chad from 10 years ago evolved as this show has grown?
Well, I think I'm much more in tune with Florida's conservation issues. I think I'm much more aware of Florida issues just because I've traveled and talked and seen. I've talked to so many people and seen so much. Um, so I think it's really sharpened my ability to be just a better advocate. I think I just know more just because I've seen more.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I'm kind of really looking for what's the best way to use that advocacy, for our state. So I think if anything, I've just grown a little grayer, a little wiser about what we need to do here to keep Florida beautiful and wild. Um, and then I've learned how to run a business and integrate my family into it because family life is crazy and business, running your own business. I've got 6 full-time employees and it's just a lot. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of plates in the air with that stuff.
You feel a little bit of pressure being the ambassador of Florida?
um, uh, at certain times, when Florida's in the spotlight, there's a lot of times I'm embarrassed of Florida. Florida just does some stupid things, whether it's somebody on the news doing something stupid. So, sometimes I get embarrassed of some of the news that comes out of Florida. Some of it's fair, some of it's not fair. But I don't know. I don't necessarily feel any pressure. It's a self-ordained title, so it's not. I don't, it's not a. I don't. I'm not a paid ambassador. So
to be continued with that one.
yeah,
Because I think you do a great job. I think um gosh, I don't know how many more times I can say you do a great job because it's a real pleasure to watch your show. And I think for the most part, I think we're going to end it there.
yeah.
Chad, where can anybody find you besides How to Do Florida on YouTube? Where else can they find you? Where else can they watch your show if they don't live in Florida?
Well, I mean, I'm really excited about this. We just launched our digital streaming channel called the Discover Florida channel.
Nice.
So
Okay.
anybody who has a Roku, Apple TV, or Amazon Fire Stick can go and search for Discover Florida channel, and you can download the channel right there, and you can just start watching all of my content. My kids show, How to Do Florida, my yard show, a lot of 1-hour specials that we've done around the state. So I'm really excited about that because now anybody can watch it, and we're always adding new content there.
Very cool. Very cool. You didn't get back to me on how I can get behind and watch you and Chef Justin cook some delicious stuff so I can eat some stuff.
I'll send you an email on that.
All right. Cool. Chad, thank you so much. I really appreciate you jumping on. And I can't wait to watch. I have Amazon Prime. I can watch the episodes on there now. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, if you have the Amazon Fire Stick.
Okay, so I need the Fire Stick.
Well, how do you watch your streaming content? You have a Roku or Apple TV,
No,
smart TV?
I have a smart TV where I have Amazon Prime on it, and
Okay,
so I
so
watch
just
those.
go to your app section there and
Yeah,
search Discover Florida channel. It'll come up.
perfect, awesome, very
Yep.
cool.
Yep.
Because that little YouTube screen gets a little, not that
I
good.
know. I know.
Cool. Well, again, Chad, thank you very much. That'll do it for today's show. Thank you, everybody, for listening. And please, guys, go check out How to Do Florida. Chad, thank you very much, sir. I appreciate your time.
Thanks, Johnny.